Hey everyone, so this week I'm going to continue on with masks. Didn't realize I was going to do 2 weeks in a row about masks, but what this is multiple small masks that get mixed together to create a more high resolution looking mask. So if we look at Photoshop, what I have small 128 masks. So these could even go smaller. I could do 64 by 64, or even 32 by 32. That's getting a little low for the gradients, but the goal is that, let's say you have a really big object in your environment or your scene, and creating a custom mask for it, it's going to need a 4096 or an 8K mask to get the resolution that you want. Well, what we can do instead is we can use smaller resolution masks. Let's say you have a very large vehicle or something. You could use a 256 by 256 mask on it, paint out everywhere you want detail, everywhere you want mask. It's going to look very low res, but then you can use another mask to break up the gradient inside there. So you break up the fall off, so the fall off of the mask becomes more detailed and higher resolution. So let's take a look at that in Unreal. Now, what I have here is I have that 128 by 128 mask here, just straight across a flat plane, and then I have 128 by 128 gradient and noise mixed together that creates this fall off, that creates that noise in there. And then here I've clamped that noise, so you get a much more detailed kind of fall off breakup there. And you can see this is it looks pretty low res when we really get up on it. But if we were mixing texture, if you had two different materials inside there, that fall off would break up a bit more. And you can see another one here, which is the halftone here, which was that 128 by 128 circle. It has a little fall off on there, so as it falls down, the circles also get smaller as they fade away. So just to see how that's working. Now let's take a look at this inside the material and how you can set this up and make your own mask. Actually, let's look at another example. I have a model here. I just pulled in a random model that I had, and you can see that with the gradient on it. I do have a little of the spots in here. I just scaled up the UVs on the noise to just show the gradient. But this is just the gradient, and then if I put the one with the noise on it, you can see that now I get a lot of breakup in here. So I could go in here and paint like a very low resolution mask all over this thing and then break it up with the noise. So by breaking it up with the noise, we get a much more high resolution looking mask. And I can open this up and you can see that I have an instance material here that I set up, and so I can scale this around. I can scale this breakup of this detail to the scale that I want it to be. So it could be anything all the way down to something really tight like this. So I have a ton of control to create much more high resolution mask with two very small textures. And you can see the tiling now in there as this gets to 18 times, but let's say we got to like 12. You start to 1, 2 on there. So even if this was a really big object, say the character was down here looking up at this thing, we could have two textures blended together and break up there, and all we used was two very small textures with very limited texture memory. This is also really good for LODs too, because let's say instead of vertex painting, we want to paint masks instead. We could use small resolution masks that then get broken up by this other smaller mask, and when the LODs get created, they're gonna shrink down. Your UVs aren't gonna move, but your verts are gonna get deleted. So your gradient on a vertex color is gonna change as the LODs go down lower, but a gradient on a texture is not gonna change as your LODs go lower. So this is a clean way to do LODs with a lot of masking and not have the pop as the model goes out back in the distance. So like I said, we have these two textures as our source, just little 128s, and we have them applied here. So let's look at the material. Now the material is pretty simple. It's actually You know, going back to one of the earlier videos I did for Tuesday Tips, the height map blending, this is the same as the height map blending, with a few little things added to it. So if I scale this up and we look at it, what I have is I have that 128 mask and 128 gradient. And what's happening is they're going through a process. They're going, this mask is getting subtracted by 1. And then this gradient here, this noise is getting subtracted by 1. This main gradient here is getting multiplied by 2. And then the result of the subtraction and the multiply are getting added together. And then we're clamping them. And I'll try and attempt to explain this in Photoshop in a second on how this kind of works. But this is what's happening, and then it gets clamped to 0 to 1. So a normal texture, black to white, 0 is black, 1 is white. Now we can go below 0 and above 1, and anything above 1, mathematically could still be a mid-gray. You could say 1 is a mid-gray or a dark black, even depending on how big you stretch out that black to white numerically. And even, you know, -1 could be your black. So we want to clamp that back to 0 to 1 to be the same as a texture, which is 0 to 1. Black is 0, white is 1. But once we're in here, once at this add point, we're actually -1 to 2. So we want to bring it back to 0 to 1 to be like a normal texture. So anything else we do to it is treating it as like a normal texture, and we're not getting into like crazy weird math for just our textures. So that's, you know, that's pretty much it. I have some multiplies on the UVs, so I can scale them and change them up. So like I said, if we look at some of these instance materials that I have here, of that one that I just opened up, it's just an instance of that. I know I can change my colors. Change our colors, and we're gonna have that. And then I have mask break up UVs. So if I check this box, then I can control that number, and we can break them up. And I can scale that down and break that up. And I can also replace this with any other texture I want. Also, here's the main UV. So if I want to scale that gradient, I can. If you had some different things that you wanted, probably wouldn't really scale this main UVs. Probably be a custom 0 to 1 or something like that. But you can always use it for all kinds of different things. And then here, if I go to 2 and it's a little bit bigger, or let's even go to 1, and we use that contrast that was on there. It was a simple contrast in the material. As we bring this up, it starts to harden all those edges as it contrasts, and we're at like 5,000. But you know, for a 10, it's gonna be pretty much it for that contrast. So we have that flexibility there. And if I go back to masks, we look at textures. If I replace this like with another small mask and start to break up the UVs, you can see that we can start to break up that gradient in a lot of different ways. With a lot of different textures. Let's see if there's any other maybe textures we could use instead, just to try them out. Let's try this one. There we go. We've got some bricks in there. We can clamp that. So we've got like a brick texture that breaks up, and you can see that this texture is only breaking up in this gradient, and as we mess with the contrast, that's shifting this over. And the one thing with these masks is that they are set to mask no sRGB, so they are linear. That way, this is 0 and this is 1, and the mid gray that I want is 0.5. So that's about it for this. I mean, you can do whatever you want with it. If we look at it here, like I said, we can break this noise up in a bunch of different ways. We can put the halftone on there. Put a different noise on there, so you can get a lot of breakup in here. Now, this model was not set up well for the UVs or anything like that, so we do have seams. If I were to paint a mask, I'd probably avoid the seams, or I would use a a different UV set for around the areas that I want to blend. That way I can make it seamless, and then I would have the seam somewhere in the black or these hidden areas where I'm not going to change or have a mix of the two. So let's look at the math real quick on this, and I'll attempt to explain this really quickly and see if this works. So what this is this was our material right here. This is our material right here, right? These are our 128s, and this is what happens to the first one, and then this is what happens to that gradient. So if we look at the first part, 0 to 1, right? This noise is 0 to 1, so it's very noisy. And what we do is we subtract by 1, so we're -1. Now what happens if we look at it kind of like a graph, this whole thing just got shifted over to -1. So black is -1 and white is 0. And so this whole thing just kind of got shifted over. Now if we look at the gradient, like this one right here, these two, it goes 0 to 1, and so it's just a fall off. And we times by 2, and so 0 times 2 is still 0, but 0 times 1 is 2, so it gets stretched out. So when it gets stretched out, it's much bigger. So we're stretching these things out, these numbers out, and then we're adding them back together. Now this is where it gets kind of funny for me in my head, not great at math. So now when we add these together, we've stretched this out even further. So we've got -1 to 2 now, so this thing's much bigger. And what we're really doing is we're isolating these things out to start to combine in the mid-range of that gray. Black is still going to stay black, and white is still going to stay white no matter what, but everything we add together is going to, all the action and changes are going to happen inside the mid-grays. So let's look at a calculator real quick, just for fun math time. And let's add some of these together. Let's say we have a -0.5, and we add it to 1.5. Right, it becomes 1. So what would have been right here goes to right here. So not much to worry about here. I mean, you don't really have to think about it this way. We can just like copy this and paste it and just call it done and never worry about it again. But the real thing is that helped me understand a little bit more is that when these numbers are adding together, they're stretching out, and then it's giving it the room to break these things up in the middle. And then when we clamp it, it takes this -1 and turns it into a 0, and then it takes the 2 and turns it into a 1. So we're 0 to 1 again for the clamp. So that's what's happening kind of mathematically, and I know that's not the best example, but maybe it helps you understand a little bit more what's going on with this math behind the scenes. So I want to show you real quick, because where I saw this and where I got this from, it's right in here. If we open up a height lerp, so any of these functions that you can add, we can open up, and so this is already here. Now the only thing is I'm just doing something a little bit different with it. I'm basically just adding features to the height map blend. The height lerp. So here's that same math right there, and even the contrast. So it's all exactly the same. So why not use this instead? You could use this. You have your A, your B, your transition and everything. You could use this as a mask breakup. But what I did was I just added some multiplies and breakups here. We could also do a lot of different things, right? We could and copy paste this, and I can copy paste this, and I'll take this one off since it's a function. Sorry, it's a parameter, not a function. And we can multiply these, and I could multiply this again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to break up the breakup on my mask. we'll just say 1. And so we have very, very noisy there. And if we enable the preview node here, and we move this around, we should see these things break up a bit more. So they're multiplying together. This noise and this noise, actually we could change this one to the dot and maybe see it a little bit better. There we go. And that's much easier to see. So now we can break up the noise. So this is our noise mask. So this is what's breaking up the gradient, the mid grays. Well, we can break this mask up even more on a different UV scale and add a lot of more functions to it. Or instead of multiply, we could add it. And if we look at this instead, so we start previewing this, now we have a very different looking thing. We could even start changing this thing. And we could start to add features to invert instead, to break up the mask. So I can do all kinds of things to these noises that then translate into the gradients of this, and I can give myself all kinds of features. I can start adding switches in here to break all of this up to give me a different result, and have a lot of control over our gradients and our here, and just with 2 very, very small masks. So hopefully that gives you some more tools to work with, so you can keep things simple, keep things compact and small. And our games all are we want to make the biggest, greatest thing, but we're going to run out of memory really quickly if we do that. So we're going to run out of GPU memory, and our games aren't going to run anymore, and they're not going to load, and our textures aren't going to load, and they're going to stream in really slow, and we're going to see popping and all kinds of things. So we want to limit that and give us flexibility with these things, so we can do a bunch of very low res masks, and then have a small library of a bunch of 128s or 64 by 64s, or a variety of small tileable masks that then we can break up the fall off of our larger masks. All right, so have a great week, everyone, and thanks for watching.